So let's say you're training a client of yours, and that client says, my doctor, who's this world famous doctor, has written articles and published studies, tells me that squats are a bad exercise. You, as the trainer, you're going to have a lot of things run through your head at this point. First, you're going to think, well, this doctor doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. And if you say that, then you're put in two problematic spots. One is you seem like you're now jealous, right? Actually, three problematic spots. You seem like you're jealous. Two, you put your client in a bad situation because now they're confused, but you're also mad because the doctor put you in the bad situation of confusing your client. And three is if you say anything negative about the doctor, you just seem like a negative person, right? So you're put in a really, really bad spot, even though you know that this doctor who made this claim is in the wrong. But you also want to know is, why does this doctor say this? Of course, maybe the doctor knows something that you don't know, but for the most part, you're pretty confident squats aren't a bad exercise. If you can execute them with decent form, if they don't hurt you, all the basic common sense rules we have, right? And there's not just one way to squat, right? As long as you do a version with stance width or bar position or goblet squat or whatever that better fits your ability. So this creates a lot of issues for you. Now, what if you go home or you go and you tell your significant other or family member this, or you get on social media and you say this and everybody says to you, oh, dude, are you really arguing about one silly exercise? It's just one leg exercise. Just do something else. Just do lunges. Just do deadlifts. Just do leg press. But are you really just going to argue about one exercise? We have better things to worry about. Is this all you trainers have to worry about? Are you just trying to go for territory and, you're part of the problem now? And you're thinking, I'm part of the problem? Like, I'm not the one who made this claim that that's now confusing my clients, and that client's going to tell their friends, and this client now shows me an article that this doctor wrote. So now when other people who see this article, because it's published in a major media resource, they're going to see videos we publish that have our clients do squats, and many of them who've seen the article are going to think we don't know what we're talking about, or that we're actually doing wrong by our clients and somehow putting them in harm's way, or that we're somehow negligent because we don't have the knowledge that this doctor knows. So this one little claim that this doctor made, it seems to be about an exercise, has major repercussions on you that are way farther than just it being about an exercise. And it certainly has nothing to do with your motives about fighting for territory or because of anything. You're just basically saying you want to have your side said, and you're like, no, that's not true. But you look bad no matter what. And then you find out the reasons why the doctor said it are not good reasons, right? He says, well, they're bad for your knees. And you're like, that's been long debunked. Or they're bad for your, a lot of people get hurt from doing squats. And you think, well, yeah, because they do them wrong. They do them too heavy or their form sucks. So I'm not going to blame the exercise for their poor application. You know what? Just plug in the word burpee for everything I just said. And you see now several things. You see why many of the reasons why trainers are trendy and love to say that burpees stink are just as bad as the reasons I just showed you. And then when someone like me basically says, maybe you don't like burpees and that's fine, but as soon as you're irresponsible and you're there holding up your sign and says burpees are dumb, that has implications on a lot of people. Me, I've written several books. These are two of my 3 books. I have my version of burpees in these books. I call them gorilla burpees, but I do think they're a little bit more of a refined version of the burpee. But that falls out on me because someone else is very irresponsible in how they say things. Instead of just saying, well, we don't really like them, we don't really do them. But as soon as you say, this is a dumb exercise because it bangs your wrist or it puts your wrists in extension. By the way, no more extension than a friggin' push-up or a bear crawl, which many trainers who do bear crawls and push-ups say burpees are somehow bad on your wrist. Or, well, it slams your wrist down. Well, not if you do it with control. Or, well, people commonly do them wrong. Well, people commonly do deadlifts and squats wrong all the time, except you don't blame the squats or deadlifts. You blame their application for the way they misuse it. But because burpees are commonly misused, all of a sudden it's the exercise's fault. See, that's logically inconsistent. And anytime someone's logically inconsistent, it means you're wrong. It means you're full of shit, right? Because you're now bending your logic to conform to your bias versus being consistent. And then when people say, well, it's just an exercise, we have better things to do. You're thinking, well, no, it's not just an exercise. This is about clients not being so confused and frustrated. I've seen trainers be brought to tears by going, I just don't know who to believe. You say, I don't know what to believe. This person knows this trainer's over here is smart and they have a big resume and they say this. And then I go to this trainer over here and they have just as impressive a resume and they say the complete opposite and everybody sounds convincing. I just don't know what to do. I'm just going to go back to what I know. Right? And this happens all the time. That's the biggest frustration it is. So when then someone like me comes around and say, it's important to talk about your reasons and not just assert these things. Because, it may make you feel good and, it may fit your little culture over there. But when you put that out there for the rest of the people, you have to think past the sale. You have to think, how is this going to impact the field? How is this going to impact other trainers, right? So you take me in a bad spot, right? I have several really well-selling books. Some trainers here, some strength coach somewhere. And it's not just people like bigger name coaches like Mike Boyle or Ben Bruno who say it. A ton of strength coaches say this, from working with pro and collegiate teams to a lot of people. So don't think I'm just trying to hint, and passively aggressively talk to certain people. That just because they're the names doesn't mean that there's plenty of other coaches who are in higher positions that have these same thoughts. All right, I go to a lot of conferences and I see this kind of stuff stated all the time with assertiveness as if, man, it's the knockdown argument. So when I see people say things with so much confidence like that, and I say, what's your evidence? If you say it with that much confidence, you really must have some good arguments for that. I want to hear it because, I certainly don't want to be wrong. And then their arguments are like, well, people commonly do it wrong. I'm like, that's all you got? Well, people commonly do squats wrong. Do you still do squats? Yeah, well, they just need to be coached up. So they don't need to be coached up on burpees? Like, why are we inconsistent here? It really comes down to that simple. Oh, well, you don't really slam yourself to the ground like that. And who says you're slamming yourself? Just go down with control. Well, people don't have the flexibility to get down that far. Okay, put a little elevated Reebok step down there and put their hands on that. Just like you modify a squat or a deadlift based on trap bar foot position, you can't modify a burpee to better fit someone's thing. Oh, well, just because people, just because it's hard, it's a good exercise. Yeah, that's called intensity. Isn't that why we do intervals? So on one hand, we'll say, well, people don't like to do intervals. They'd rather do steady state cardio instead of 5 minutes of hard intervals for 10 seconds as hard as they can and 50 seconds off and be done in 5 minutes because they don't want to do them because they're hard. And you say, well, we do burpees because they're challenging. Oh, well, that means you're a lazy trainer. You see what I'm getting at here? Right? So these incredibly contradictory arguments are put forth by people who are just clearly surrounded by people who just never challenge them on anything. And that's why they put it out there so confidently. So then, because they're in a respected position and because they're otherwise intelligent and have had success in the field, the fallout of them being irresponsible and not just saying, well, we don't really like them, here are our reasons, which is a little bit more, actually a lot more of a humble and responsible way to say things. It kind of is basically acknowledging, hey, this is just us, right? But we're not trying to say that, somehow imply that this exercise is so bad that anybody who has a head on their shoulders and two brain cells rubbed together would never apply this exercise. But when you say it that way, then what happens is people go, well, clearly you must know what you're doing because you're in this position that I'd like to be in. You work for a professional team or you've had this sort of resume. And then, they come to a course that I'm teaching or they had one of these books and they see my version of a burpee in there. And they come to me and they go, so-and-so, high-end, well-known coach or, coach over at the so-and-so university who's won championships says these aren't a good exercise. Now this person who said this, now puts me in a bad position because if I just go, well, I'm sure they have their reasons, but I do what I do, I kind of seem like I don't have good reasons. I seem like I'm just trying to be wishy-washy about it. But if I go, well, that person is, doesn't know what the heck they're talking about, then I'm put in a bad position because I'm now negative and I seem like I'm now jealous, and I put them in this coach versus coach sort of thing. That's drama they don't want to be in. And if I start addressing the arguments, people forget about the facts and remember the fight. Then it comes out, did you hear what Nick said about coach this? Did you hear what so-and-so? And it becomes all this drama. All because somebody else out there was completely irresponsible with how they spoke. So being a leader, being an educator, should be a vehicle for being more responsible with not just what you communicate, but how you communicate. And that starts with humility and thinking past the sale. And that's why these discussions about burpees and things aren't about burpees. They're about all the fallout that happens. So now you're a trainer and somebody, you've found out your mom has been training with me, and you hear that I have this reputation, and you see me doing my version of burpees with your mom, and you're thinking, well, I thought Nick was really good, but if he's using this, he must not know what he's talking about because so-and-so said that's a dumb exercise. But I can easily debunk all those reasons that person said it was a dumb exercise. So, it's about clarifying confusion for trainers. It's not just asserting yourself. So it's about being a little bit more humble. Lastly, every trainer that I know that's worth their salt has the same rule for their employees and for themselves. They say you have to be able to you should be able to justify everything that you're doing with a client, which means you should be able to explain it. Why? You should have a good reason why. And I want to emphasize good. It's not just that you should be able to explain it, because you can use what I call catch-up words, core, functional, so-and-so type of stuff, right? Because that's like ketchup. You can put it on anything. Meaningless, right? Doesn't make you a good cook, right? Just putting ketchup on stuff. So it's not that you can explain why you're doing it. It's that your explanations are actually valid and reliable. And I don't mean just by my standards. I mean the standards of basic rules of logic. One being that you can be logically consistent, which means if you're going to apply it to one exercise, you have to apply it across the board. And if you can't apply the same logic for two exercises, you are not able to stick to your own rules, which means you are bending things to be convenient for you, which means you are being illogical, and that means you're coming to flawed conclusions. Prime example is, well, I use squats. Yeah, they're commonly done wrong, but that doesn't make the exercise bad. It just means the application is bad. I don't use burpees because they're commonly done wrong. Right? Oh, well, they're unsafe. Well, okay, if you do way too many of them out of control and you do go to extreme ranges of motion, sure. Squats, I could say squats are unsafe. And you go, why? Well, if you do them out of control and go to extreme ranges of motion and do too many of them. Okay, well, that's just your poor way to apply it. See what I'm talking about here? Now, if you think that way, not only does it have all that impact with your clients, but now that affects how you program, because organization of programming starts with organization of thinking. And how you think about one thing is how you think about everything. So if you're using flawed thinking processes to come to conclusions, it means you're going to end up with flawed conclusions, which means you may be leaving out certain exercises and concepts that could be very beneficial, possibly more beneficial than what you're doing. It could means that you're spending some time on some concepts and techniques that might not be the best for that individual because you're kind of biased towards them. So it's not just, again, about an exercise. It's about the processes that you used to get there, because how you think about one thing is how you think about everything. And if we all think it's important that you should be able to justify what you're doing and that being reliable, go back to the squat thing and all the fallout that happens from when someone says, oh, squats are bad. And then when everybody looks at you, when you say, well, no, that the doctor's not right. And they start to say, well, that's a doctor. Who are you? You're just a lowly trainer. And you think, well, just because that doesn't mean they're right about everything, just because they have a big resume. Well, what happens when you see two coaches going at it and you go, well, that coach has got more experience than this coach, so clearly that coach is right. You didn't apply. It didn't mean the doctor was right because that doctor was older, more experienced, and more credentialed than you, because you realized that they were still wrong. But yet you think someone else is right in an argument simply because they're more credentialed and more experienced. Logically inconsistent. You see, you realize that you look at the argument, not the arguer. All right, and you also realize that just because somebody is taking a certain approach to something, arguing the validity of squats, just because to the outside of many people it just looks like an exercise. Well, why do you care? It's just one exercise. Clearly you're just, looking for something to say, or this is clickbait or whatever. And you're thinking, are you serious? Like, do you realize the fallout this happens, right? This takes half of my clients and makes them so confused and second guessing everything that we do, and they don't know what's right because we've been using squats for a long time. Now they doubt me. Now it starts to break our trust. Now they start to doubt if I know what I'm talking about. And then if I defend myself, then I put them in a bad spot because they don't know how to sort through what I'm saying. And so they don't know now if I'm just fighting for territory or who to trust their doctor. All of that, if somebody was just a little bit more fucking responsible with how they communicate. And if we were also all a little bit more humble than ourselves with when we see somebody talking about something that we don't think, that seems to me, I assume that means your motives are negative or the worst motives. You're just trying for attention, or it's all about your ego or whatever. So that must be the reason why. Without ever asking them. Just because you can't think of another reason why doesn't mean there aren't other reasons behind this person's motives. By the way, that's called what Scott Adams, the author of a great book, which I highly recommend on critical thinking, called loser think. He says that's what they call that mind reading, where I basically tell you what your motives were, and then I judge you based on what I've told you your motives were. Instead of being humble and either asking or just assuming, well, that seems to me that they're like that, but I don't know that, and this person could have other motives that I'm just simply not considering. Man, that kind of humility, you show that kind of humility, especially in fitness with, you're an endangered species because it's nothing but a bunch of insecurity and narcissism. And I don't just mean taking butt selfies and shirtless pics, right? Anyway, that's kind of my rant on that. I'll catch you on the next one.